A member of the audience asked you, Julie Bunn, and Karen, you can respond too after Julie if you care to. You were involved in healthcare issues in the House of Representatives in the past. What do you see as important issues for the future of Minnesota?
I view healthcare and healthcare finance and needing to lower the cost trend in healthcare, bringing down the rate of increase, the #1 domestic issue in the United States and Minnesota at this time and in the decades ahead. Everything else we do for our families, our businesses, and the state government hinges on our lowering that rate of increase in healthcare costs. It's pushing out our ability to hire employees and businesses. It's pushing out our ability at the state level to adequately fund K-12 and higher education programs and keep tuition modest. Everything hinges on it. I chief authored a market-based, patient-centered healthcare reform bill in 2007. I co-authored the big reform of the last 15 years, the 2008 healthcare reform bill, which is estimated to have knocked 12% off the cost trend in the subsequent 5 years in this state, over billions of dollars of savings for our state healthcare system. We have just begun that process, as you know, from the complicated discussions at the federal level and now states having to adapt to some of those changes. It's complicated, but we have to continue to work on it. Minnesota has a fabulous healthcare system with tremendous private-public partnership between our healthcare systems, our research systems, and our public systems. And we have always been on the cutting edge of innovation, both on policy and finance, and we will continue to be so, and I will be intimately involved in that process. I'm looking at the sign, still a few more seconds. On that front, I want to say that the kinds of reforms we're going to now experience from the federal level, Minnesota again is on the leading edge. First of all, the consumer protections for health insurance that they passed at federal, Minnesota already had them. We were already there. So we're not going to experience a lot of change on that front. Minnesota is spearheading, implementing its own Minnesota-style insurance exchange. I am hopeful that exchange will actually make it more transparent and easier for small business in the state to purchase healthcare products competitively.
Is this other one working now? Yes. Okay. Good. So now you got your own. I actually think the question was what are the most important issues, and I believe not just door knocking in the last couple of months because I'm running for public office, but speaking to residents throughout the community for the last 12 years, especially since 2008, the biggest issues are jobs and the economy. And what we have to do at the Capitol and in the legislature is really focus on how we can create more jobs or help our business owners create more jobs. That, I think, is the #1 thing. Once the economy gets going, then everything else falls into place, including the school shift and having more money to find innovative ways for health care. Getting our business owners, helping them to create more jobs is our #1 priority, and we can do that, but we need to ease their tax burden. Right now, when you keep increasing the taxes on our small businesses and our corporate businesses, you're taking that right out of their bottom line so they cannot expand. We're getting phone calls from governors of other states offering our businesses here to move there because it's a much better situation, but their bottom line is going to be a lot more. They're not being taxed as much. We have to really help our businesses to create jobs. We also have to streamline our regulations. There's a cupcake company right here in Stillwater who I've had on my radio show many times. They've been trying to get their cupcake business up since January 2011, and they're shooting for it Halloween of 2012, just because all of the hoops they have to go through. So every time a business wants to expand, there's another paper you have to file, another agency that you have to go through. So those are the two things, is we really have to take the handcuffs off of our businesses to help them create jobs. That's the top priority at the legislature.
Is everyone able to hear both candidates adequately? Okay, the next question from the audience. I'm Karen, I'm not going to you first.
No, I'm trying to figure out whose turn is first now, too.
Someone in the audience knows. They're keeping track. Julie, 2 minutes. What is your definition of wealth from the audience?
First of all, I want to spend a few of these seconds talking about the jobs economy situation. Karen, in her two questions back, also alluded to the time period when I was a legislator and said it was a time when we increased taxes and increased regulation. That couldn't be further from the truth. During the time I was in my first term of the legislature, which is the time period she's referring to, there was no tax increases during that entire period of any kind. In fact, there was several tax reductions of various kinds to conform with federal law that had passed. In addition to that, I am on record and have actively advocated for lowering the commercial industrial property tax in this state, and I am on record and have voted for many times lowering the corporate tax. In fact, I don't even think corporate tax is really particularly a good tax to have at all. Corporate taxes are even more regressive than property taxes in terms of who actually pays the tax in the end. These are two areas, our corporate tax rate and our commercial industrial property tax rates, which I do believe that Minnesota is not in line and is out of line with the surrounding regions and with the country, and that we should bring them in line as part of that overall modernizing tax reform I suggested. And all those studies I referred you to earlier also specifically mention those taxes and lowering those taxes, and that's one of the reasons I support the recommendations of those studies. In terms of wealth, I think it's very important. I say to people when they say, how do we look at what the well-being of a Minnesota family is? I say it hinges on 5 things. First of all, you have to have a job. Secondly, how much you bring home from that job, your wages and benefits. Third, how much of that you get to keep, so the taxes you're subject to. Fourth, how much can you purchase with that? What's your buying power? And fifth, at the end of the day, can you breathe the air and can you drink the water? Okay? So our personal wealth, our well-being, and our families hinges on all of those things, and as leaders, we have to find the right balance to achieve those goals.
Karen? What is your definition of wealth?
And I think it's waking up every day and living in a free country and be able to have innovative ideas and be able to implement them and to grow your idea into a business in your garage and continue to grow it to be one of the greatest medical companies in the state of Minnesota, Medtronic. That, I think, is wealth, being able to be free in this country, in this state, and every day when I wake up, I feel like there are more big brothers coming down on me, more mandates, more legislation from the state, more from the federal government. And it seems like we're going down a path where there's less and less freedoms, and I think that's when we become a very poor nation and a state. So I think wealth, to me, is freedom.
This is a question also from our audience, directed first at Julie.
Sorry, Julie.
Our public schools are getting more and more money, but the results, graduates, math skills, reading skills, are abysmal. Why should taxpayers be required to support an educational system that doesn't produce? 2 minutes, please, and then we'll give Karen an opportunity also to reply.
Thank you. A couple of points. First of all, as an economist, we have to start with the grounding in the facts. In terms of public school funding in Minnesota over the last 15 years, adjusted for inflation in real terms, per pupil spending has not kept up with inflation. So, in fact, school districts have had to make cuts in order to afford their education for the students. So the actual purchasing power of school districts to pay for the teachers, pay for transportation, has gone down in real terms per pupil over the last 15 years. Having said that, you're absolutely correct. Our U.S. education system is in need of significant reforms. I was teaching a political science class yesterday at Forest Lake High School, and I understand Karen's going to be joining them next week. One of the students asked me about my vision for education, and he asked me what I thought the quality of a Minnesota education was. Was it good quality? By national standards, Minnesota is doing well. It has for a long time. It's always been in the top categories by national U.S. standards. By global standards, not at all. Our country is falling behind, and Minnesota is falling behind. More engineers and scientists are produced every year in Pakistan, India, and China, way more than the total number produced in the United States. So we have got to reform our educational system in terms of the type of curriculum, in terms of the process for learning, and also in terms of the effectiveness of our teachers in the classroom. All the research shows that that in-classroom teacher is the most key element, and we have to make sure those teachers are well qualified, that they're accountable, that they're evaluated, and that we have a system that works for our students.
Karen?
And the question was, it was in equal amounts, right?
I'll read it.
Okay, you kept it on top.
For once.
Yes.
Our public schools are getting more and more money, but the results, graduation rates, math skills, reading skills are abysmal. Why should taxpayers be required to support an educational system that doesn't produce?
Both of my parents were, public school teachers. Growing up with two public school teachers, education, and this isn't just for me, education is to every parent one of the most important things in their child's life. And also, moving all over the U.S. and Canada, I got to experience a lot of different school districts, research school districts, and what I found out is Minnesota does have a very good system in place for education right now. There were some states that we lived in that there was absolutely no way I could put my child in the public school district. But when I came back to Minnesota after my husband retired from his career, things had changed a little bit. We still are in the top 3 in the nation for ACT scores, SAT scores, and graduation rates, but it does need to be reformed. Our funding formula, which is 73 pages long, how different districts get different amounts of money, yet it doesn't correlate with the grades aren't any better by the more money per pupil that the school district gets. So that needs to be looked at, and that needs to be reformed. We also need to be looking at the last in, first out. That is the LIFO, and if you don't know what that means the last teacher hired when they make cuts is the first teacher to get fired. That needs to be looked at because we're losing a lot of great teachers because they're going to be the first ones to be let go when there are some cuts. Also, my best friend is a school teacher, and we have long conversations about what we can do to reform education, and she says there are so many mandates and rules coming down on her that she's no longer able to teach to the kids anymore. It's every day there's new paperwork that needs to be filled out on every student, and now it's not just coming from the state level, it's coming from the federal level. And where education really needs to start is right here at our own local level with our local teachers, our local parents, our local school board. We don't need Washington, D.C. in the Stillwater School District.